Welcome to the A2 Show with Andrew Cass and Aaron Parkinson, bringing you the trends and topics that affect our lives the most: business, politics, fitness, family, and finance. With over 50 plus years of combined business experience and over $1 billion in revenue generated, your hosts have a unique gift for seeing many steps ahead where others do not. They bring their unfiltered, contrarian views to the show every week to help you win in business and in life.
Welcome back, everybody, to a special edition of the A2 Show. Kennedy blocked from the 2024 first presidential debate stage. Aaron, we had to do an emergency episode here because this is a big deal, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, because we're seeing something happen that we've never seen happen before. And what scares me most is this is an elimination tactic. And we're running into potentially the most important elections I think I've seen in my lifetime. I'm 50 years old, Aaron. I know you're a couple years younger than me. Even though I look younger than you, I know you're a couple years younger than me. We're doing a show on peak performance and longevity next week, so I had to throw that in there. But it's a scary thing right now because we're seeing anytime there's elimination, Aaron, not competition, I get really, really scared because now we're tipping into like communism, dictatorship type stuff. And I know you have a different, well, you have the same perspective, but I like the fact that you're not from America. So I thought you'd bring a great perspective to the show, but also because I had to have you on because you're my co-host. So, but I like the fact that you can be truly outside of the U.S. unbiased here. So it's going to be interesting to hear your perspective from outsiders looking in, because by the way, there's people all over the world looking in on this right now going, what in the name of what is going on in that country right now?
I think there are a lot of people that are concerned about what's happening in the U.S., both internally and externally.
Yes.
But unfortunately, I know a lot of people, they've kind of given up on following politics.
They have. I feel like people are throwing the towel in, and it's sad.
They're just feeling like I can't control anything. I'd rather just turn a blind eye to it. So I think what's important is to give a little context to the situation, because there's an extra layer to this. You know, America is very much a two-team system, right? You've got your Democrats and your, can't even talk today, your Democrats and your Republicans, right?
Yeah.
And because it's such a two-team system, a lot of people aren't really aware when somebody else comes in and tries to disrupt it, because they just don't really give it a whole lot of credit. And RFK, who's been pushing his candidacy almost exclusively through podcasts, mostly because he's been blocked out of the major media sources.
You got that right.
Actually has significantly more ground attained than maybe any other independent in history. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, because you're much more politically inclined in the United States than I am. Who was the closest ever as far as votes gathered as an independent before RFK?
It was Ross Perot, and I don't know if it was the 80s or the 90s. And by the way, he was on the debate stage as a third candidate against, and I can't remember who the candidates were at the time, but nonetheless, he met the polling criteria to get on the stage. And the reason we wanted to shoot the show, sort of a last-minute show, is because if something like this continues and compounds, we're going to start to lose our right to vote for who we want to vote for and who qualifies to be on the ballot. And then all of a sudden, we've lost democracy, and we've also lost what's called free and fair elections, which is democracy, right? Democracy is driven by free and fair elections. There really is no democracy without free and fair elections. So if you don't have free and fair elections, everything else after that is meaningless, because if you can't vote for who you want to and who qualifies to be on the ballot, you start to lose a lot, and you start to lose a lot of freedoms and liberties. And that's why we wanted to do this, because we come back to politics and business the most on the show, because it's a business and a political show. But this particular piece right here is something that I'm passionate about, because I've been a donor to Kennedy's nonprofit organization called Children's Health Defense since 2019. So I'm going 5-6 years now donating. And I also am part of his grassroots finance team for the Kennedy 24 campaign. So I'm very versed. I get on the webinars at times. I've raised some money for them. I promote him very aggressively on my social media. And naturally, we talk about an independent candidacy, Aaron and I, quite a bit here on the show, because we're independent entrepreneurial people who are independent, Aaron. They don't get pulled into the dogma, right? and you and I are like this with fitness too, right? There is no one size fits all with fitness, with medicine, with finance, with politics. But we have this dogma where you're either on the red team or the blue team, and you can't listen to any middle ground. And Kennedy's the first guy that's come in and he's put a stake in the ground that's really in the middle. He's brought both sides together. He has Republicans and Democrats coming over. And as a society right now, I don't know if you know this stat, Aaron, I have a lot of stats here today, is we now have the largest number of registered independent voters in American history at this time. I think the number is over 60%. It's never been over 50.
I didn't know that.
So there's a lot of people there's an independent appetite right now. But
so for those people,
the techniques that are happening right now that brought us to this special edition are what we're going to talk about.
So let's lay the foundation here. If you want to run as an independent, if you want to qualify to run, can you maybe share with the viewers or the listeners what has to happen?
Yeah, so the Republican and the Democrat Party in the U.S. are locked in stone. So all you need to do is be the nominee, the elected nominee to be on the ballot. So Trump is the elected nominee for Republicans, right? We just came off this run of people wanting to be the nominee, and he pretty much wiped everybody out. DeSantis got close for a little while. You and I both would have loved to have seen him be the candidate as an up-and-coming guy who did a great job with Florida. Didn't happen, though, okay? Biden is the incumbent, so naturally nobody's going to run against him, although there were some people who ran against him. And interestingly, Kennedy ran against him, and he was eliminated from the Democrat Party simply for exercising his constitutional right in saying, I want to take on Biden as an incumbent. It's normally frowned upon in politics if somebody has a second term that they want to go for and someone comes in and says, I'd like to compete against you. And that's the problem. Like, why shouldn't another Democrat go, you know what? I think I can do a better job than you. We're on the same team, but I'm a better quarterback than you are, and I want to compete against you. Would that, in sports, would the coach ever go, no, you're not going to compete in camp against Drew Bledsoe, Tom Brady, because he's my guy no matter what, and I'm not going to look at you. No coach would do that. They want everybody getting a fair chance in camp, and that's the football analogy.
Put him, in that case, they might put him on the bench, but they wouldn't kick him off the team for wanting to be the starter.
Better yet, they wouldn't change the rules of the Democrat National Committee agenda to make it where he couldn't even go to camp and compete in this example, right? So in the example I gave you, the DNC actually changed the primary policies where they said if you get on the ballot in New Hampshire, for example, it's a big battleground state. They said you will never be part of this party again. I mean, mafia type techniques. This is all documented. They didn't just say we'll compete against you, sure. If you can compete on policy and you can compete on being a competitor, you wouldn't need to eliminate someone. Elimination comes from dictatorships of Russia and Stalin back in the days and Hitler in the German days. Nobody could compete. They just got jailed or censored. Well, did I just say jailed or censored? Because Kennedy's being censored and Trump is about to be jailed. I'm in America. Did you catch all that?
Yeah, I caught it.
That's eerily close to those things we look to in history and say we could never be. We need to fight and come together to never let democracy slip into totalitarianism or dictatorship. Those were two really, really close techniques. We're talking about the Biden administration has eliminated Kennedy from the Democrat Party. He didn't want to run as an independent, Aaron. He wanted to run as a Democrat and actually take Biden on. He would have absolutely crushed him, but they didn't let him speak. They censored him. They eliminated him. They labeled him. They diminished him, and they made him look like a second-class citizen. And we saw what they did to Trump. Love Trump or hate him. The guy's been in court for falsifying business records and inflating the values of his properties, but yet there's no victims. And now they want jail time. This isn't – I know some people have a hard time listening to that and going, no, that's not true. He's a real evil guy. Even if he is, they weaponize the justice system against their opponent. You can't argue that.
Well, I mean, ever since he
declared he was running?
Ever since he said he was running the first time, it's been this perpetual attack over and over and over again. And I'm not saying he's a good guy. I don't really think he probably is a good guy. But it's that old adage, if you put a cop on somebody's tail for 50 miles, eventually they're going to find a reason to give him a ticket. They've been trying to find a reason to give him a ticket since day one.
They ran on it. I mean, so it's not even you and I having an opinion. It's the DAs in those districts actually ran on it. They said, my campaign, my election is to get Trump. I mean, you have decorated Democrat liberal You know who Alan Dershowitz is? He's probably the most decorated liberal attorney. He was part of the O.J. Simpson campaign. He was part of the team that got him off.
Yeah.
Love him or hate him for doing that. He did his job, and he basically put holes in the evidence and got O.J. off. He's a decorated liberal Democrat lawyer. He's a Harvard scholar, and he absolutely despises Trump. And he wrote a book called Get Trump, and he detailed how they actually weaponized the entire legal system to take Trump out. That's not – this is scary, right? This is going to start to leave us in a situation where we don't have choices. But back to Kennedy, right? So they started with the DNC, so he had to flip independent, okay? Now, as an independent, he loses the ability to easily get on a ballot.